So I just wanted to start off by saying that right before I joined this, I just finished the movie An Elephant Sitting Still. Have you guys heard of it?
No.
It's a
No.
4-hour. It's a 4-hour Chinese film directed and edited and written by Hu Bo, who killed himself right after it came out, and it was this beautiful movie about despair and the misery of the human condition and the hope lost in the situation we all find ourselves. And a better podcast would talk about that, but unfortunately that's not in the number 10 algorithm. So today we're talking about Tiger King.
Come on, you guys, go. Let's do it.
So if you haven't seen Tiger King, you're
like me.
Colette is the strongest,
Congratulations.
most morally sound of
What
us.
is sure?
Tiger King is
really good at being so lazy. I don't watch what's going on.
I would say not watching Tiger King is moral fiber to an extent. And I salute you for it, Colette. But unfortunately for you, you're on a podcast with 3 degenerates, so we're going to drag you down to our level for the next hour.
Oh, God.
Just
like my second marriage. Let's go.
Hamada. All right, so does anyone feel compelled to kind of come in with the synopsis for this?
All right, check it. There's a community of wildlife, like privatized zoos that are garbage for the animals.
Okay.
And then there's also a rescue, which is garbage for the animals. And one of the dudes from the privatized zoos hates the woman from the rescue. And that's the first episode. These 2 people hate each other. Cool. Second episode focuses on how she had a husband who disappeared under mysterious circumstances, which is really just all a bunch of conspiracy, hearsay, whatever. It's just garbage for garbage people. And then moving forward, it talks about how these other privatized zoo owners all have like really controlling relationships with young people.
You mean sex
I don't
cults?
like that.
They're like cult leaders.
They have sex
Yeah,
cults.
like that.
Yeah, they're cult leaders and they groom teenagers using like the animals.
And there's this like whole thing where people were like, oh my God, have you heard about this? Where the one guy, so the main guy's Joe Exotic, that's his name. It's just going to be easier to refer to him by his name instead of being like the one guy. So Joe Exotic is gay. Fine. He had 2 husbands. Sure. Whatever. Turns out neither one of these people were straight, and he was just like kind of with money and drugs and the animals, like kind of luring them in, but people were all caught up in like, oh my God, this gay man has 2 younger husbands.
There is a debate as to whether they're bi-curious or not, or bisexual.
And I don't
Whatever,
trust this
they're-
documentary to specifically be good at giving that due, because they literally misgender one of the staff members like the entire time.
Yep.
So like, yeah, these people could have definitely been
Who I think is fluid.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm gonna refer to
the
them as
person
them.
they misgender.
Yeah, he identifies as a dude, I believe.
So I actually read an article about this today because I wanted to make sure that I like wasn't misspeaking to this, but the only palatable person in this entire documentary is this person who goes by Saf. He prefers to have he, him pronouns, but if asked if he was a trans man, he said not necessarily, so he might be fluid or non-binary, something like that, but he prefers he, him pronouns. They literally refer to him by the name Kelsey, even though he goes by Saf.
That sucks.
And he's pretty cool about it. He's just like, yeah, it's fine, it's whatever.
In his Esquire interview, he says he doesn't really give it. He prefers he and him, but he's kind of flexible. But obviously that doesn't speak to the documentary being irresponsible. But
what's not flexible is the fact that he gets his arm or his hand like cut off, basically, like ripped off.
His whole arm.
That's kind of like where, as much as I love Saf, and I think he's a badass, so like he's almost too much of a badass. Like he's almost too loyal to Joe Exotic in that one instance. Because like if I were in his situation, I would totally. Because the doctor basically says, we can amputate your hand or you can do reconstructive surgery. And the reconstructive surgery probably would have worked. But he's just like, nah, chop my hand off. Like, he could have been, like, chilling in the hospital collecting workman's comp, like, with that morphine drip.
It's like,
Well, do you think they really had workman's comp? Like,
that's a good point.
Okay.
That's a good point.
That's a good point.
Like,
I will say though,
here's the other thing. Like, I used to work for an animal shelter,
Right.
and a true blue 501c3, and I worked as an adoption counselor, like on the floor with the animals, doing paperwork. I also helped out like the animal care techs, and then I moved up to the admin office where I was the sole person who input donations into the system.
Yeah.
So I did a whole bunch of other things, and watching these. Oh my God! Watching the for-profit zoos and also that big cat rescue made me want to jump out of a window, because even talking about like dogs, cats, and bunnies, and even like adoptable mice, the animals' comfort was paramount
I did.
in that at that
think
place.
that the big cat rescue place is a little bit misrepresented.
I think so too, but I gotta say, like, seeing those like really small cages, and it's privatized.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
it's like.
Yeah.
And you can't work volunteers like that. You really can't. We had a whole volunteer
that's
system.
expletive.
Here's the thing. I understand what they're trying to do isn't necessarily bad. And if there's an animal that has been like indeed rescued and is living a better life,
Yeah.
that's awesome. It is not the right way. There are so many things that are fucked up about how that place is run that I do not agree with. Coming from the perspective of, not exotic animals, but domesticated adoptable animal rescue, working in every facet of that organization. Like, I saw everything.
You have the most experience out of anyone on this podcast about it. Their side of the story is that and I don't fully buy it because they're kind of fishy people too, but like their side of the story is that like there's actually like hundreds of acres for those tigers to roam around in, and then it's not actually full being shown. The documentary is kind of misled, because the thing that I'm not defending them either, but the thing that like everyone who is now like Harambeing Joe Exotic, like the line that they keep repeating from the documentary that either Joe Exotic or some other idiot on that documentary says is like, well, they keep their tigers in cages too, but it's really like there's like a reason for that. Like, you can't.
No, and that's totally like, I mean, we have to keep animals in cages at rescues.
Yeah.
Like, it's not where they should live forever, but it's just kind of something you have to do. Those cages look fucking small, but then again, I'm not an exotic animal expert. But I just want to bring this up. This is a small aside, but another thing that fucking ground my gears more than anything, besides the PETA stuff, which I'm sure we'll get into later.
Oh yeah, fuck PETA, by the way.
Fuck PETA, by the way.
Fuck
but
PETA, for
there's
sure.
a scene where Joe Exotic flies over in a helicopter, flies over the big cat rescue. And this person who's like, oh, I love all these cats, I love all these animals. Like, they brought up in the documentary that these cats are freaking out because of the noise. And I'm like, yes. What kind of person who's like, oh, I saw tigers and I love them and they're my great, flies a fucking helicopter over a rescue full of animals that don't know what that sound is?
Yeah.
Like, dogs go nuts during the 4th of July because of fireworks. The 4th of July is the biggest day nationally for missing pets, because they get out of their yard because the fireworks freak them out. A helicopter? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, and Colette, by the way, it ends because, he's in jail for attempted murder.
What the fuck? Just what the fuck across the board?
The best thing about this documentary, the thing that I actually like that it brings up is, I think, a point that like people have been circling around for a while but don't really talk about much, of like the idea that most people who are these kind of big cat owners and do it privately, like, they're not in it because they like really truly care about big cats and like just absolutely love them. They're in it because it's a pay to play status level, right? You can get into anything. If you have cats, you can kind of flash around. They were talking about people who would go to Vegas and bring them into like hotel rooms and like these like fucking like creepy ass 60-year-old dudes who would like get pictures of them with hot girls because like, if you're like drunk at Vegas and you see
They have
someone,
tigers.
they have a
baby
tiger you
tigers.
can pet.
I think it like inadvertently says something a lot about American capitalism. I mean, I don't think intentionally set out to do so, but I think it's like capitalism in a microcosm.
Yeah, absolutely.
But-
I mean, there's this whole element of like it's literally just a status elevator. That's like, I've never I mean, from Mike Tyson to Joe Exotic, I have not seen one person that's like made a big show of owning a big cat that I've been like, oh yeah, I want to hang out with that dude. That would be fun.
That's a cool person.
I would not want to hang out with a big cat in person, period. We just talked about somebody got their hand fucking ripped off. It's a big pass.
Yeah, they're dangerous animals.
I'm in the suburbs of California. I don't know what the fuck to do if a tiger tackles me.
There was this here's the thing, I hate the memes for the show because people are like, haha, Joe Exotic's so funny, and I'm like, he's not. But the only meme I've seen that I actually liked was that Joe Exotic is the Wario to Steve Irwin's Mario, and I'm like, okay, that's
I kind of like the memes, but I have to turn off my brain to like them. You know what I mean? Like I don't think anyone who's making these memes is like supporting. Some people are, but I think most people are not like making the memes like supporting big cat abuse. I think they're just like bored at home and like scared because they're trapped in this. You know,
like,
we're all big cats in cages now.
I mean, that's
exactly.
Read a book, play Animal Crossing. Please do anything else. I'm so concerned.
I mean,
Start One Piece. Why not? Read Homestuck. It's great.
I think that's the question to ask about this documentary and it taking off so much is that, like, you know, I had been asking you guys in the chat earlier before, why is this evoking so many more emotions than, like, I don't know, that, like, Ted Bundy thing that came out, or, like, the countless true crime things, and why are the memes taking off? Because it's, like, compelling, but it's, like, it's not, like, more compelling than something like Firefest, which is made by the same guy, and that didn't get, like, nearly as many memes, even though it's, like, I think a lot more, like, batshit crazy of a spiral story. I mean, watching Joe Exotic is kind of like watching my shitty boss.
I really feel like it's just the absurdity of all of this. I mean, I just have the most surface level understanding of what happened in that mockumentary because I don't really want to call it a real documentary. It sounds like a shit show.
Yeah, it's a mockumentary using real footage, basically.
Yeah,
I will say, I think this took off way more than the Fire Festival thing because if you think about it, Fire Festival had like, you know, probably a year or two to meme marinate and to be out there because it was such a big thing before the documentary showed up. So it was like very interesting and people were talking about it again, but it wasn't, you know, like quote unquote new. This was just like, here comes Honey Boo Boo, but while we're all trapped and with murder and big cats, which, you know, I think there are so many like little elements to it where it's like, oh, these garbage trash people who attempt to have somebody killed also own private zoos with tigers. Is like such a weird thing.
I come in to wonder though, would this show have been as significant had the coronavirus not been a thing, right? Like if this happened in normal business as all thing, would it be quite the success that it is now?
I think it was the first. I think I'm going to make the argument that it wouldn't have. I think it was like the first, and I agree with Colette. The absurdity of it is the appeal, and that's why I enjoyed watching it.
I honestly think it would have still been a thing. I don't know if it would have been as mainstream. Like I don't feel like the I don't want to call people normies, but I don't feel like just the average Joes on my Facebook would be talking about it. Yeah, I don't feel like the normies in my life would be like talking about this or be as invested in it if they could like literally go do anything else. But I definitely think the weird degenerate fucks like you three still would have watched this.
Well, see, I always make the argument because I see all these articles, these like moral panic. Why are we watching
getting
this?
Everyone on our level of degeneracy, I think.
Say what?
The quarantine is getting everyone on our level of degeneracy.
Well, I still think that there's a certain perspective of like all these articles start out with like it's #1 most watched, and it's like everyone knows those Netflix algorithms aren't real, right? Like they just push their new shows on them when they have their top 10. It's like there's no way they're doing their actual top 10 most watched because it would just be The Office like every week forever.
Right.
So it's like
I mean, also the way that they calculate that is like literally if you click on something and then immediately close it, they still count it as you having quote unquote watched
really?
it. So shows
really?
that otherwise, shows that people don't actually really like end up showing up all the fucking time as like, oh yeah, no, everybody's watching this, you should too. And it's like, no, everybody watched the first 5 minutes of this and realized the premise was really boring and turned it off.
Yeah.
Is that why Mars Needs Moms was trending at one point?
Wait, Okay, do you guys? I want to just put this out there. Do we all think that like Pornhub probably has a better algorithm for like most popular than Netflix does?
Yeah, 1000%.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I've always
Well, I know
fantasized
that-
about fucking my stepsister in a washing machine.
I seriously think that like there's something more like like I don't know what like Pornhub's motivation would be to
They're chaotic
like
good. They're just like,
I don't know
yeah,
about
we'll do the right
good.
thing, but for our
Yeah,
reasons.
no. Pornhub is literally just like, hey guys, we're gonna teach sex ed, and everybody's like, fucking awesome, wow, that's amazing. And then they're like, we're also going to plow snow in neighborhoods that are being snowed in
We're
right now.
gonna
And
fix
everyone's like,
potholes and send people to
they're just
school.
confused
Also,
clapping.
here's that quadruple.
everything they can to have maintain like neutral HR while like putting out teen sex videos. That's basically.
Right. They're like,
like,
yeah, we host revenge porn, but like also we plant trees for every revenge porn you watch, so balances out. No, parody. I do not support the sex industry.
they are typically pretty good about taking something down. If
Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
Of you being in it. I had an ex post revenge porn of me, and it literally only took about 2 emails for them to be like, "Oh yeah, party, we'll take it down."
That's good.
That's really cool. That even heightens Pornhub more in my mind.
Right?
than-
I have such a positive opinion of Pornhub because of this.
So Nevin and
Podcast is
Maddie,
brought to you.
Nevin and Maddie. Speaking of
By
porn,
the way,
I
please
want to
sponsor us.
I want to talk about the kind of pornographic spectacle that this whole documentary puts. Do you guys feel that this is straight up an exploitation piece, or do you think that there's like awareness it brings and is one worth the other, etc.? I'm very curious.
Oh, 1000%. I think this is exploitative. People aren't going to suddenly develop an intense interest of big cat rescue over this. It was just like, haha, look at all these drug addicts try and kill each other over tigers.
Yeah. I will say I think that it started with, well, the thing is that we realized most of the footage we have is from the quote-unquote reality show they were going to do before he got arrested.
Yeah.
Right? So this was going to be exploitative from the front, but I think there was one person on that team who was like, hey guys, what about the animals? Because at the very end of the last episode, it shows like footage of Joe Exotic from like years ago where he was like, these cats don't belong in cages, and it's just our job to, if they're here, to give them the most comfortable life that we can because they should be in the wild, and like really like altruistic rescue stuff. And it's just like a very sad juxtaposition. Yeah, 30 seconds of this really sad juxtaposition.
I will say, the one character and the one character that I do kind of have a crush on for some weird reason is Josh, his campaign manager.
Oh yeah,
He's the one
Josh
He's the
was
one who
all
actually
of us.
picks up that
He was
point.
kind of the audience avatar. He was just there like, holy shit. He's every employee who's like, I need the money, but dear God, I got into something so ridiculous.
He's like he's a fucking manager of the ammo department at Walmart. He's like this gay kid who lives in Oklahoma who vapes a shit ton of weed, is like a quote unquote libertarian, but to him that just means he wants to legalize weed and like abortion and.
Well, he says he's like, I'm a libertarian, so technically fuck the feds, and I'm like, oh, okay.
You're right.
Like all these guys have that. They're like, yeah, like fuck but like the government they're talking about is like the fucking Fish and Wildlife Service and the USDA, like something to fucking own like koalas. Like, the dude is like Thomas Jefferson, like they're all like, because Joe Exotic says like if they try to take his tigers away, he's gonna like start another Waco, and that other guy's like, yeah, Thomas Jefferson, it's my constitutional right. Thomas Jefferson says it's the right to rebel against tyranny. It's like because they want to fucking like own like fucking like I don't know fucking wallabies and fucking like red pandas and shit.
Yeah, I will say, hearing the fucking Waco comparison that he made, he's like, oh, it would be Waco. I'm like, who like sits down in an interview and it's like, hey, so how would you feel if we did this thing that you didn't like? Oh, well, Jonestown, man, we're just gonna go for it. Like Waco's, why not Heaven's Gate?
Queering Waco is what he is. He's actually practicing. He's taking what the Branch Davidians did and he's queering it and making it like a liberatory praxis.
Oh my God.
So
that man ran for president against Donald Trump and didn't win.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I saw that John Oliver. I realized I definitely watched that John Oliver episode when I was
Me
in
too, and I
when I was
forgot
in
about it.
Europe in 2016. I remember seeing that and being like, "Who's this tiger guy?" And I think I looked it up, and I did not make that connection until they brought up like, "Oh, I do remember this guy. Like he was kind of like around. Like the memes marinated, but it never really took off until this." And it's going to keep going.
It was pretty small.
This is just the peak.
Oh,
I've
yeah.
been reading in. They're apparently Universal Content Productions, which, like, who knows what the fuck that is. I don't even want to know what company or what stupid app they're about to make. But they're doing a podcast for television. Who knows what that means? Where Kate McKinnon's going to play Carol Baskin, and that's the only person connected to it. And I'm just not looking
Right.
forward to this movie.
The actual Carol Baskin has a good point, which is this: they're just gonna what this documentary is gonna fucking do is they're just gonna fucking hire because these creeps also fucking supply Hollywood with like every time like in George of the Jungle or whatever fucking movie.
He supplies a whole bunch of movie animals.
Yeah, every time we see these animals in movies, it's coming from these fucking weirdos. So by making an actual documentary, unless they do like shitty CGI, like making an actual not a documentary, an actual drama with these people, it's just fueling the fucking thing, like the demand for more fucking tigers.
There's not enough wine in this box to cover how I feel about them like producing a movie.
As long as they use like shitty CGI tigers, like the fucking if they actually hire like fucking Doc, the fucking who we haven't gotten into yet, but the fucking like Jeffrey Epstein fucking yoga sex cult teen girl sex cult stage magician tiger cult guy.
Wait, how do you know what I just watched on Pornhub?
I just want to go on record as saying that I have hated literally everything the three of you have said for the last 22 minutes.
Colette, we're doing this so you can be up to steam on everything and don't have to watch it. Like, I don't want you to watch this.
It's like less time of your life wasted than actually
Bold
watching
of you to assume that I just won't remain willfully ignorant of popular media. I still haven't seen any of Game of Thrones
Neither
or
have
Breaking
I.
Bad or Star Wars or Lord of the
You
Rings.
should definitely watch
Well,
all
Lord
of
of
those
the Rings
things
is actually
before you watch
good.
this.
You should not watch
I
Game
will
of
watch
Thrones,
none
but
of
you
those
should watch
guys
everything
play
else.
Monster Hunter in my panties.
You'd be better spent playing Monster Hunter in your panties than watching this show, honestly. I say this as someone who watched it and thoroughly enjoyed it, was entertained by it. Like,
I will say one of the more endearing things I've heard about this movie being made is that Joe Exotic's ex-husband, John Finlay, someone had like interviewed him about the movie, and they were like, "Ooh, are you going to be played by Brad Pitt?" And apparently he just kind of like looked to the side and was like, I think Dax Shepard's probably the choice for me."
Oh,
Hey,
good
Dax-
for him.
Dax Shepard is
Dax Shepard's hot.
he is a cutie.
Dax Shepard is hot.
But his husband's
I
man,
felt like a strong-
that the abuse, it's weird that the documentary, and if I have anything negative to say, because in general I judge stuff by how much I'm entertained by it, not like how like responsible I think it is, which that's its own thing.
That's valid.
I'm working on that, but I will say if there is
that's
something
fair.
that I really think is ridiculous about the documentary, it's that they spent an entire episode doing this kind of irrelevant, did Carol Baskins kill her husband previously to this thing, but like didn't do an entire episode on like him
Stupid.
feeding meth and weed to like this 19-year-old that was like not really sexually
Yeah,
attracted to him, because that's like the most horrific part
Well,
of the
because
story.
Carol has to be more of a villain. They had to make her more of a villain so she could like stack. I'm not saying that she's great by any means, but I'm saying they had to make her more and more and more villainous so she could like be seen as like a, oh, who are you rooting for, Joe or Carol? Which is
like,
so
Yeah.
fucking
artificial
dumb.
intrigue.
And
They
it
all
was-
suck.
It was so weird because the entire time I'm sitting there going like, because we're all swayed by the emotions that like film is a powerful medium. So I'm sitting there going like, yeah, I don't trust this Carol, and then like right after the episode's over, I kind of look over everything and I'm like, No, like, Joe's worse. Like, no matter how much they try to convince me, oh, maybe Carol, it's like, nah. Like,
If all of these dudes are like, if like exotic pet owners are fucking creeps and weirdos, is like, if your husband's one of these like creeps and is like feeding him to the tigers and starting an animal sanctuary really that bad?
I feel like in my very limited interaction with this, I saw somewhere that he was like really abusive and awful. Yeah, no, he probably had it coming then and fed him to tigers because he was a serial cheater and was probably some weird sex cultist tiger fucker. Then you know what? Maybe he just had it coming. If somebody fed Joe Exotic to a tiger, I think I'd cheer at this point.
Yeah, I'm like pro Carol feeding her husband to a tiger, honestly.
I will say though, like something that I think that they kind of glossed over is because they mentioned that Carol and whatever her fucking husband's name was, when they started out, they were breeding lynx, like wild cats for sale.
Yeah.
As pets.
yeah.
And that's just kind of like, oh, well, she did this, but now she does that. And I'm like, wait, what?
Well, I also think that brings up like thinking of things in which this documentary, obviously, it's pretty absurd to even talk about it, how this documentary fails if in functionally as a useful documentary is that like they don't actually interview any, like the closest they get is fucking PETA, which I'm sure Madeline has.
I have a rant on PETA. Are you fucking kidding me?
They don't like actually interview any like anyone from the Humane Society or like the World Wildlife, but like they don't actually interview any conservationists and like they don't actually explain like these tigers are so like interbred and like tigers are like humans, like all mammals to an extent, like have not just instinct but like acquired skilled learning. So like in the wild, tigers like teach their cubs how to fucking survive. So you can't just like dump these fucking tigers. And like these tigers are so interbred, like tigers in the wild are fucking like all have their little niches. And probably tigers in the wild, they're so endangered, they're probably inbred at this point. But like these tigers are like fucking bred for human purposes. They're like bred to like, or like if you want like a white, if like Siegfried and Roy want a white tiger, they breed tiger cubs for cub petting. That's like, so they're super affectionate. So like if you dump these tigers in like Burma or whatever, they would just be like stumbling around. A lot of them have intellectual disabilities, these tigers, and like they'll just be like stumbling around, and like poachers will just like immediately poach them and like fucking like sell their testicles or whatever. Like
There is just so much in everything you just said to unpack that I don't think I actually hold the emotional capacity to process most of it.
Well, yeah.
They should have talked to anyone from, as you said, World Wildlife or like the International Humane Society who does like deal with like international issues, including like a dog puppy mills for food and like Korea, like they do everything. The closest they fucking got was PETA, but of course they're not going to talk about PETA euthanizing adoptable animals because that wouldn't be a good look, will it? And Carol Baskin's happy as fucking stop working with PETA.
Yeah.
PETA's not good.
Yeah.
Well, the thing I fucking love about PETA is like they're fucking like PETA's their fucking propaganda about like fucking like how like how no yeah like if you hunt, like if your like dad's a hunter, like he's Jack the Ripper or whatever, but then like they fucking like support like putting down pit bulls, like
No, any adoptable, they're like at the most extreme level, PETA believes that if you have a domesticated animal, that's not right. Like an animal should not be domestic. Like they should be put down. PETA is like an extremist garbage organization. I will die on that hill. Carol Baskins, if you're listening, fucking stop working with PETA. They're garbage. I don't care if they helped you take down Joe Exotic. And Joe Exotic's fucking working with PETA now too.
Oh yeah, he snitched.
To get the other people in trouble.
He flipped. He fucking Joe Exotic flipped, and well, Joe
He
Exotic
snitched
also
to PETA.
now is anti. In prison, he says that he's anti. Says that he's anti. He thought he's ashamed of what he did and being in
Oh
prison.
yeah, that's the equivalent
how
of someone
convenient.
cheating on you and being like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I would have never done that." It's like, no, you got caught.
Yeah, basically. I
But
love
see,
that
the
dude
overall
that
thing
linked
about
on
the documentary is that, like, it's not going to cover most of these things because it's, like, made for Netflix. And, like, at the end of the day, like, with all these documentaries, there's a reason they don't hit the heavy hitter. There's a reason you don't see made for Netflix documentaries by, like, Ken Burns and Werner Herzog. Because these movies need to have the appeal to literally everyone. Like, part of the secret to Tiger King's success is that, like, yeah, like the worst people I have on my Facebook feed, which Colette like existentially struggles with my Facebook feed, and I know, I'm sorry, Colette, I try.
She
But
told me that
oh
my
my God.
comment section was looking like yours, and I went, "Oh God."
Yeah,
Okay,
no, my comments.
because you had that post. You had that post, and it was about something like so innocent and ubiquitous, and that guy was just like, "Well, Obama commit war crimes," and I was like, "What the fuck, man?"
I have
I
a
think
bad
he was
habit of
kidding, but I
literally
was like, I'm
never
not gonna get into
unadding
it.
anyone. But I was just gonna say, like, the worst people on my feed are like the people who are treating the Carol Baskins thing as like the Hillary emails thing, where there are like actual grown ass human beings, like people that are like 30 years old who like watch that whole documentary and their main takeaway is like, man, I really do think Carol Baskins killed her husband. And I'm like, holy shit. Like that's what
Which
you
is,
want.
like-
That's what you got from this?
I also like don't get like the people who are like Carol Baskin. I mean, regardless, like I don't get the people who think that like Carol Baskin should free her tigers or something. Like because what would happen is just like then the tiger like what would probably happen is they would just get run over by a car or like shot by some hunter. Like because the Shenandoah Valley has that problem of like people poaching like black bears just to like hunters poaching black bears just to like harvest their gallbladders and sell them on the black market. And like these fucking hunters, these fucking dairy farmers like shoot wolves whenever like people try like. But even if like that didn't happen, like what would happen is these fucking tigers would just like decimate our ecosystem because they would be like the dominant predator.
No, it's really dangerous.
Yeah,
Well,
I
it's-
mean,
it's
like
just-
literally
it's
when a
super
house
dangerous,
when
and
when
it's the
house
same
cats
kind
get
of-
released, like house cats will just fucking destroy their ecosystem. So like
Yeah.
if there's a tiger running out there,
Yeah.
Yeah, spay and neuter your pets, by the way. Please.
yeah, spay and neuter
By
your
the way, spay and
petting
neuter your
cubs.
pets because there are so many cats in the wild
Yeah.
in America, and I'm not talking about big cats. I'm talking about your regular fucking cat. Sorry, you got me on a tangent.
And
Short.
speaking
At a
of
rescue.
spaying and
Spay and neuter
neutering,
your
I'm
fucking
gonna have
pets,
to
please.
spay and neuter all of us for a second for an ad break. So hold on to your genitals because we're about to do an ad that, as people who listen to this know, is probably not going to be a real ad. So I'll talk. Product coming soon to Netflix. You laughed at the Tiger King. You fell in love with Ted Bundy. Now, get ready to parasocially attach yourself to Casey Anthony. Casey Anthony is a wild, wacky badass, and you never know what she's gonna do next. This weekend, get ready to say H2 holy shit at the new docuseries that your estranged grandfather has some problematic opinions on. Come on, you know you'll watch it. You have nothing better to do. The algorithm sees all and knows all. Sacrifice your best years to laugh at tragedy with us. Hail Paimon, he sees everything, the ruler of all the world. Lady Lagoon on Netflix tomorrow. Watch it, you fucking idiot. We don't have any respect for your time. Oh, don't worry. We're doing anime. We're gonna exclude myself on the next episode.
No, we're gonna do subject.
No, you have to be the me of an episode and just listen to
Yeah, you're
fucking
supposed to be the
horror.
one who's like, what?
Huh? His little sister?
Yeah.
That's weird.
No, y'all gotta find some fucked up anime to watch, and I will sit and be like, wait.
I
I'll
will
be like
laugh.
I'll be like the Luke Wilson of like the podcast, where I'll be like, oh wait, what? What are you talking about? Oh, a frat in my house? Oh.
His stepsister
Hey, I like that
and
movie.
his teacher, a domestic
Same time.
girlfriend.
Girlfriend? Colette, you and me, girl. Wait, we just talked about citrus. What? They were sister?
They were.
Uh.
What do you mean? It's kind of. What do you mean? It's kind of rapey.
They're not blood related.
What do you mean? It's borderline sexual assault in the first 4 episodes.
Speaking
It's
of
fine.
borderline sexual
they hold hands
assault,
on Christmas.
speaking of borderline sexual assault, let's talk about the the other guy. Let's talk about the the fucking cult leader that they interview. They establish him as running a sex cult, and then they continue to interview him throughout the rest of the documentary as if he's like a reliable source or something. It was weird. I didn't.
Yeah, that poor woman who was interviewed.
Yeah,
Like,
and
hey,
she
how was
only
your
got
time
one
with
episode.
Doc? And she was like, oh, I had to get implants because of him. And they're like, oh man, that sucks. Anyway, Doc, what do you think about the privatized zoo industry? And he's like, I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's up with that woman's dad though? Just like dropping her off to like for her first day at the yoga Tiger Mill yoga stage magician's apprentice, teen girl grooming sex cult. Like, what is like have a nice day, I packed your lunch. Like, what the
No, he literally told her, he was like, don't fall in love with your boss. And I'm like, okay, so I have a dad. And what the fuck is that comment before you drop your young daughter off?
World's greatest dad.
Imagine having a father who communicates with you, can't relate.
Ooh.
He won't hear this, just like he didn't hear how desperately I needed him as a child.
Oh.
Hot take. Anyway.
By the way,
Anyways,
Doc
speaking
is
of
totally,
things
like,
that
there's-
make light of actually fucked up situations, all of America right now fucking loves this thing.
I just want to say for the record, Doc is totally so the way that the economy of this industry works is you have cubs, which is terrible for their health. Like any mammal, including humans, like if you take a newborn away from their parent, which is another thing this documentary does not explain. If you take a newborn away from their mother, that's traumatic for both of them. So, but they take these cubs.
They also don't get socialized correctly, so they don't learn how to operate
Yeah.
as adults.
Hence why they can't be released into the wild in like their natural habitat. But like these cubs basically are being ripped from their mother's womb, ripped from their mother's like whatever, their mother's teat, and like being forced to like basically get groped and fondled by all these like mouth breathing tourists. And like once these cubs become adolescents, they'll start like mauling all these kids whose parents are paying to like let them pet. So they're not. Then like I think what did Joe Exotic say? I think it's like it cost him like $6,000 a month to like feed a tiger, and he was like getting that expired Walmart meat that he was also forcing his employees to eat and himself eating, and also serving to customers in the form of pizza. By the way, like as someone like I am a restaurant worker and I'm addicted to bars and restaurants and coffee shops, I knew I was in a bad place or like really missing that when I was like, man, I'd really love to have a slice of expired Walmart meat pizza at Joe Exotic's Pizzeria.
I don't know if one of you posted this or I just saw it somewhere else, but someone was like, imagine going to the pizzeria and then seeing the documentary.
Yeah, Jesus
Yikes.
Christ.
But yeah, Doc. So it costs like probably Doc roughly $10,000 to $12,000 a month to feed an adult tiger. So of course he's killing these adults. He's murdering these adult tigers. And I think Doc is fucking. I think that he's not just like killing them and throwing them in a dumpster. I think he's selling the pelts to like. I think he's selling the balls to like Chinese yuppies and like the pelts to whatever like yuppies want to own like fucking. Like tiger skin rugs. I think he's harvesting them and selling that shit. That's my personal theory about what he's up to. In addition to molesting teenage girls, like that's like what I like. I think that's his racket.
Sounds like a great guy.
Sounds like a guy you'd like to have a beer with.
Sounds like the kind of guy we should have interviewed in our documentary to ask him more questions on what he thinks of the animal trading industry.
Also,
Okay.
they took footage to introduce Doc, to introduce this man with silver hair and a ponytail, oh yes. And they show him riding his elephant down his suburban street. And I'm like, oh wow, there's a piece of shit right there.
Right.
Riding
I
an
wanted to
elephant.
hear more from that El
oh.
Chapo guy that they compared him to. It's like that guy seemed more charismatic and interesting. This guy just seems like you're fucking if he didn't have tigers, he'd just be like a gym teacher molesting kids somewhere.
So the Miami, this is a hot take, possibly a hot take. The Miami drug lord guy who got sent to prison for murdering an ATF agent. I feel like he could I could have some Aaron Sorkin civility thing. I don't believe in private ownership of animals, and he does. But he's I'm center left and he's center right, and we can have a beer together because of civility. He's just my mom didn't let me have pets, and then it was I was a coke dealer, and then I got out of hand. I kept buying all these animals, and I don't know what to do.
The other thing with him though, and the privatized ownership of all these animals, I think is really bad. But for his credit, however, he has one partner. He doesn't molest young girls or try to create this cult.
He's not really breeding them. He's not really breeding them.
Well,
he's their natural habitat is being destroyed. I don't know what to do with them. He was
and his facility is so private.
Yeah.
You really can't get in there. So it's really more for him in general, which, isn't necessarily a good thing, but it's not like he's handing over these tiger cubs to thousands of people and just letting them pet on them and stuff. He seems to I think care more about the animals than of themselves, which is probably why he wasn't as interesting to continue.
Yeah, he seemed more like the sort of guy who was he had did way too much coke, and then he's oh fuck, I bought all these animals. Can I send him back to Asia? Oh fuck, no. like, you know, their habitats are being destroyed by like strip mining and logging and like poaching. Like, oh fuck, like I gotta take care of him now. He seemed the most sympathetic out of the
No, I agree. I 100%
Yeah.
agree. He also wasn't like, he just wasn't as weird about
Yeah.
anything. And his wife was like, oh, I help nurse the
Yeah.
babies. And then they do, and I'm like, okay, like this is really private. Like it's weird and I don't agree, but sure. Everyone else, I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
Speaking of like sympathetic characters, I kind of want to like pivot to like I personally strongly identified with all of Joe's staff, including his quote unquote husbands. Like I think like because it's easy to get like I think the show does promote like misanthropy of like, oh, they're all shitty people, but like I do kind of relate to just being like having a weird fucked up job and having a weird fucked up boss and like you're a misfit and like this is like Oklahoma. And like, you know, a lot of his staff are queer or disabled, and like, would you like honestly, if you're someone like if you're someone like one of the, you know, one of these people like Saf or Josh, like you could like work for Hobby Lobby, or you could work for like this, as fucked up as he is, like this openly gay guy, like, and I do think that like I think that like I definitely felt an affinity for all of them.
Well, the other thing is, like, and kind of pivoting off that, but when I was at the shelter that I worked at, there was a period of time, and I'm not going to say any names or like anything too identifying because I don't want to, but I had a boss who was one of the worst bosses I've ever worked for in my entire life. Terrible, terrible human being who ended up like actually getting fired from the Humane Society by the board, because all of the Humane Society with all their infighting came together and went, we don't like this guy and here's why, like legitimate reasons. So coming from a situation where you're working with animals and for the good of animals, whether you're in the admin building or, you know, down with the adoption center or whatever, and working under an egomaniac, like it's really nice that they would hire people, you know, didn't go to college and just wanted to help animals and blah, 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 blah. And it wasn't much money, but you felt really fulfilled. But then you had to come into work and report to this garbage person. It's such a weird dichotomy of I'm doing this because I love the mission, but I hate the people. It is so odd being in that situation.
So like Joe Exotic, he like hires a bunch of like ex-cons, like guys who can't get work elsewhere, and like hires and grooms like queer runaways and like people he meets at like a fucking gas station, and like it's like the shittiest labor conditions. Like he makes people live in these fucking like moldy, disgusting little quarters and like feeds them expired Walmart meat that he's also feeding his tigers, and he's like braiding them. And like I definitely like feel, because there's that one scene where that guy is like, I think his name's John, like the long, straight blonde haired dude who's just like getting plastered and like crying about like how he let the tigers down. And I do think that like his staff do care about the animals. And I think that like in another turn of events, like they could have been like someone like the state should have stepped in and like tried to transition these people into like more legitimate zookeeping work, if that makes sense. I don't know. That's like a little Pollyanna on my part. But
I mean, I
Well,
totally
that's the thing
agree.
about I mean, the place I worked at was not the Humane Society of the United States. It was a private shelter, but it was a true nonprofit. And the thing is that like when you have something private, you have to understand that at that point, while yes, that means you can make your own rules, it also means that you are financially liable for the care of every single animal in your facility. And I think that's another problem with these privatized zoos and whatever, is that, you know, if they're having trouble, that's it. They're having trouble. Like you can't get out of it if you're private. And it's people want to do it because they're like, oh, they're going to make money. But then, you know, the documentary goes into how much money is spent on these animals. And if they were like an actual legitimate organization that really was working for the benefit of these animals and knowing how expensive it is, if they don't have $1 billion backer, they shouldn't be fucking private. Because you're not going to generate those kind of donations or that kind of revenue from tourists.
You see like how like as like they're obviously like Joe Exotic's, as his operation collapses financially, how like the tigers' living conditions they were shitty to begin with, but like how they get worse and worse. And
That was
like,
the
that's
hardest part to watch
documentary to
personally for me. That like watching the tigers like get more cramped up and seem more anxious, and then like when it's like raining and it's just like muddy and shitty, and they haven't planted any new like terrain. I mean that's the thing, is that like I mean, and I think this is a normal effect for humans. You know, the two examples I bring up are like the Coen Brothers movie Fargo and the show Twin Peaks. When you ask people about both of those shows, they generally kind of talk about them. You know, there's like a kind of consensus among David Lynch fans of like when you talk about Twin Peaks with like the average viewer, they don't talk about like the fact that the show's about a girl who was like raped by her dad or whatever. They talk about like the goofy
Wait,
quirk. They talk
you
about
just
the.
spoiled it for me.
Oh, I'm sorry. They talk
He's
about the
joking.
quirk. They talk
Joking.
about
That
the
doesn't
quirky
happen.
like cherry pie and like fucking goofy shit. And I think Joe Exotic has this thing too, where a lot of people are coming in going like, "Oh, it's this like crazy funny show about these like this gay redneck who's just so wacky." And then you watch it, and it's like, no, like there's like crazy like animal abuse and sexual abuse. It's like and like I'm not moral panicking about that. I think that like. You know, I'm glad that this exists. I'm glad I know about this at least and am aware of it. But I think just the mischaracterization is going to throw a lot of people off when they actually watch it and see how kind of depraved and like nihilistic and depressing this whole affair is. Really,
I will say, if anything comes from this in the long run, I really just hope it's like a more of an awareness. Like I hope more people feel this way about it who just aren't speaking out, because you know they're not making memes about this made me upset. Like that's not a meme, that's a feeling.
Right.
It just is. So I'm hoping that in the long term, you know, maybe someone will be like, hey, instead of focusing on this murder mystery that's dumb, what can we do about these animals?
Yeah,
You know, like maybe that
and kind
one of us,
and for
hopefully,
people to
like,
kind of look at the whole big cat industry as a whole, because like, you know, I think if I'd watched this documentary beforehand, I wouldn't have like weird qualms about anyone who just like owns a big cat, and now I do. And I hope that we are kind of just more vigilant in being able to kind of spot red flags with owning big cats and what that entails. As this kind of you know, we've been talking for a bit, I kind of want to hear just Colette's reaction to this, because you know Colette's the person who hasn't seen it, and I'm really curious. I mean,
Okay, so here's my takeaway from this. Here's my takeaway from this. I hate it. Uh, I want to lead with that. I hate it. Um, Part of the reason that I really hate it is that somebody who has watched a lot of people circle the drain due to drugs, mostly like meth and heroin, which is kind of rotting the infrastructure of small town America, it's really hard for me to consume any media that in any way, shape, or form glorifies somebody who not only uses but pushes other people to use as well. So that kind of immediately soured my perception of the series, just knowing that, like, oh yeah, he was bringing in, like, you know, vulnerable and impressionable young LGBTQIA plus people and either, like, coercing them into marrying him or getting them addicted to drugs. That kind of hit me really hard and grossly immediately. I was like, okay, I fucking hate this dude off the bat. Like, already super disgusted. But when we start getting into everything going on with the animals, it just kind of makes me horribly depressed, because they're going to have a horrible quality of life, and knowing that there's nothing that I as an individual can do to like stop this on a wide scale, and even, you know, if I somehow manage to amass the fortune and the means to shut down all of these horrible rescues in private zoos, it doesn't fix the underlying issue that is poaching and rapid degradation of their natural environment. So it just kind of like snowballs me, and I'm like, I don't like any part of this.
Yeah, you said it. That's a very good point. I kind of just like detached. I kind of just have to like shut off that. I'm like already depressed about everything else, like the like thousands of people dying from the disease. So like I have to like actually just like short circuit my brain. I had to like short circuit my brain to even watch it, and like. But everything you're saying is 100% spot on.
the most important part of this documentary is like literally the last frame after it's over, where they're giving out all the like where are they now things, and they have a stat that there are like something of like 5,000 to 10,000, which first of all, insane margin, tigers in captivity right now, and then something like
in America specifically.
yeah, and something like 4,000 tigers in the wild. Like that
They should
ratio
honestly-
is like disgusting, and like when I saw that, I was like, the documentary should have fucking been about that, not about like whether Carol Baskins killed her fucking husband or not.
Yeah, I like kind of went into it wanting to defend it, not the documentary itself, but like people just like relaxing and they're stressed out and like like and just trying to binge
But
it.
outside of that, I'm honestly really disappointed in Netflix for putting something like this out. Um, Netflix, if you ever hear this, fucking get your shit together, dude. Like this is horrible media.
We're all just like being held hostage. Like we used to just like go to bars and like hang out with our friends, and like now we're just like imprisoned in this like fucking algorithm hell where like all these shit like fucking Facebook and Netflix have to like mediate our fucking social interactions, and it's really it's just really a real fucking
I
bummer.
mean, like,
Like
not a super hot take and kind of an unpopular opinion, but my life has not changed whatsoever because all I do is sit at home alone and play video games, so I have a hard time comprehending how other people are struggling this much.
Like a second hot take, like my job was really, really stressful, and then I got let go because, of Corona. And now I'm like, oh, I have the energy to go see my friends because, I'm not, like, as much as I'm upset because I'm unemployed, I have something in the work, so I'm like, okay. But now I'm like, oh, I have the energy to see my friends, and it's like, you really thought? That's stupid. Watch Tiger King, idiot. And I'm like, okay, I guess.
I think we're gonna go through this though with every fucking like going back to the previous question that Caleb asked. Like, I think we're gonna go through this with every fucking like mediocre Netflix show that gets put out is gonna be like because everyone just like stuck at home, like stuck in their house, just like glued to Netflix. I don't think this is the end. I think this is the beginning of like every fucking mediocre Netflix show.
Well, I will say, I actually did watch a really good documentary.
I was
on
actually,
Netflix,
Madeline,
like,
I
a
was
day
about
ago.
to get to this. Instead of doing promos, I would ask if everyone could give a suggestion of something to watch instead of Tiger King that they've seen.
Oh my God, you're welcome for the segue. So, just kidding. That made me laugh. Whatever.
I
So,
laughed.
I watched. Okay, cool. I didn't hear you because the internet's weird.
Yeah.
But I watched this. This is really depressing, by the way. So, like, if you're not in the mood for something heavy, then don't watch it. But it's a documentary. I'm not sure if it's Netflix exclusive, but it is on Netflix. It's several episodes, same kind of format as Tiger King, I guess. But called The Trials of Gabriel Fernandez. It covers a horrible child murder case, abuse and neglect, and where the failings were in each step of his death, and then like the prosecution and like all of that stuff. Very interesting, hard hitting, done very well. Tried to get as many leads as I possibly could from people who would like actually talk to them. So if you're in the mood for something heavy, that's really good and seems very sound, and I didn't have any moral quandaries with in terms of the production, then The Trials of Gabriel Fernandez is excellent.
Nevin, what do you got?
I don't know. Just watch like fucking like Matewan or something uplifting where like working people come together and like because like the fucking people in that show that's like in Tiger King like that's like fucking what touched me the most is like these are real fucking people who had to work for this asshole and like fucking watch something like Matewan or like something about like working class people coming together and actually like fucking fighting for their interests. That would be my suggestion. Watch Matewan. It's an old ass. It's a movie about like fucking coal miners organizing. That's all I got.
So I don't really watch things, but if you want to read a manga that is super, super uplifting and makes you feel wonderful about the world around you instead of something that is going to make you want to commit not living after you finish it, um, I strongly recommend reading Our Dreams at Dusk, also titled Shimanami Tasogare in Japanese. It is an LGBTQIA plus coming of age story that covers multiple aspects of the community. It handles coming out to your family really well. It comes out like exploring it. It handles like exploring your sexuality really well, just being unsure of yourself and that awkward kind of teenage. I don't know what's going on with me. It doesn't just have like this magical and everybody fell in love and that was it. The ending. Everybody gets the development that they deserved and that was necessary for them. And it ends on like a hopeful note, but a realistic one that I really appreciated. I also really appreciated that it kind of looks at what it's like to be elderly in the LGBTQIA plus community because you know if you're in the community, you know that we have a problem of kind of erasing our older members at a certain age. They just kind of stop existing, which is horrible and it's depressing to think about. But this piece of work delves into the relationship of two elderly gay men, one of which never came out to his family, and they have no idea that he's been, married to a man all this time. And it's really beautiful, and I cried a lot reading it, so strong recommend.
Could you say the title one more time?
No.
It's titled Our Dreams at Dusk.
Our Dreams at Dusk. Awesome. My recommendation, the Criterion Collection streaming service has a 14-day free trial. So I've been watching a lot of stuff on there. 14 days is a lot of time. So some of the best ones I watched the original Blob. I've been watching a lot of documentaries about animals that aren't depressing by John Pavley, including How Some Jellyfish Are Born and The Love Life of an Octopus. My favorites, however, have been I watched Jackie Chan's Police Story, which he directed. Really cool movie. Ooh. And I watched Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, which is about couples banging each other and infidelity, and it's a 70s sex movie that's exciting. Oh, also Fantastic Planet's on there. I know you love that one, Maddie. So definitely log on.
I do love Fantastic Planet.
Maybe also just do some 100% legal psychedelics and watch some nature documentaries. I don't know, watch some like animal documentaries, like
not Tiger King.
Fucking, yeah, not like to watch some like fucking animal like. Yeah, as much as like just like watch whatever fucking planet Earth is on that. Like just watch some fucking and see like the actual like fucking shit that we need to protect and not destroy.
Yeah, you have so much time now, and there's once again Criterion is 14 days free, and they're not sponsoring us. No one's sponsoring this shit, but like it's 14 days free. And there's or Canopy, free with a library card. You can watch 6 movies per month. And they have great sections for like LGBTQ movies and black made films. Oh, which also segues me to my last one on Netflix, BEBE'S Kids. It's super outdated, but the guy who made Proud Family made this 90s movie called BEBE'S Kids, based on like
Wait, he was behind that? That's wild.
Yeah, he was behind it.
I didn't know it was him.
Tone Loc voices a baby. It's like, once again, it is outdated, but like I had a blast watching that shit. All right, I want to thank you guys all for does anyone have any final thoughts before we head out?
Fuck PETA.
Fuck PETA.
I just want to say, Josh, Josh of Tiger King, if you're listening, you know that at your heart you're not a libertarian, and that you actually know that you're a socialist, and I'm sorry that you had to go through all that bullshit, and you're my fucking king. That's all.
And Nevin's phone number will be posted in the comments for Josh only. Josh, if you DM, I know Nevin. I can get it in for you. I can get it in with him for you.
Oh, you can get it in?
Yeah, I can get it in. In, not it in. Oh, why I oughta call it one of these days. All right. Thank you guys for listening. Allow me to play you out with this copyrighted song.